Welcome back to Jiu-Jitsu Outlet. What's going on? I'm sitting down with Ty Horn, the man, the myth, the mobility legend. Dude, thanks so much for coming on the show. So, bro, we were hitting it off right before we hit record. I was like, oh man, let me hit record because I wanted to capture this. You were just telling us a bit about your story and just about how training in different sports like jiu-jitsu or football has helped your mental health. So love to hear from you, man. Like, tell us your story. Like, what has happened, and how has this stuff impacted your mental health over the time you've been training?
I grew up in a family that was big into sports, and my dad was a martial arts instructor, karate instructor, and so I grew up with that, appreciation for those things. I played football. In high school and was all state and did the thing and got recruited from a bunch of D1 schools and did very well. I ended up playing football at TCU, at Texas Christian University. I was there from 2009 to 2012. While I was there, we had a lot of success. I think we only lost 2 games. We won the Rose Bowl, went to big bowl games, and it was awesome. I was a party animal, and when I was in high school, I was a really good kid. I hardly drank, that whole number. When I got to college, I went nuts with drugs and alcohol and bad decisions. And my junior year, or going into my junior year, I was, about to turn the corner and be the star. I was always the rover. I could play every position on the line. I played left guard, right tackle, left tackle, and they always moved me around. I played a lot as an underclassman. But this next year was going to be my big year. That's when I was the depth chart was gonna open up, and I was gonna get to really, really play and start. It was February 15th, 2012, SWAT team kicks in my door, and they coming in hot, full gear, full entry team, all that stuff. And it was a Fort Worth narcotics unit. And I, long story short, made some really bad decisions and was selling marijuana. And, I think I got popped with 2 felony counts of delivery of marijuana. And it's all over Google and all over the news like that. It's no secret or anything like that. I was able to get deferred adjudication and was put on probation for a long time. Got out of probation, and honestly, it scared the shit out of me. It was a thing that left me with, number one, my entire life and my self-worth had been determined by football. Who I was as a person was wrapped up in football. Like so many athletes, when you're a kid, you're going to go play in the NFL and nobody's going to tell you any different, And I, was really heavy into drinking and drugs. And it ended up being the best thing that ever happened to me, because I started taking the steps towards sobriety and I guess too, in hindsight, when I look back about how bad my mental health was in college, it was all just so much of a blessing, because I was in such a dark place all the time. And I didn't know, I'd never been to counseling or seen a therapist or anything like that beforehand. I didn't know how to place my feelings. I didn't know how to be honest with myself, and address problems within my own mind and just, how to process things. When you're 18, 19, 20 years old, you're still a child, and it's, as much as we hate to, you don't want to take anything away from anybody that age, but I wasn't mature and developed and an adult until I was 30, and everything in between. I got arrested when I was 21. I was on probation. I'm 32 now. I'll be 33 in January. I would have to say that it's taken that full time period for me to quote unquote grow up. And I'm not done growing up. It's kind of like jiu-jitsu, where you're never, if you ever think, oh, I'm done, I've got it all figured out, you lost. You're fucking done, because there's always something to learn. There's always something that we can take pages from other books and learn about and try to adhere those things into our lives. And because of my relationship with football, which was obviously very much so a combat sport, I had this hole in my life. I had this void that I wasn't able to identify what was missing until I found jiu-jitsu. After I got in trouble. I was on probation. I was working. My day job is I'm a custom home builder, and I started in construction, and I work with my dad, and we have a great company, and I've had to learn the ropes, and I'm blessed to have the support from my parents and my family that I have. And he taught me how to design and build houses, and that's what I do full time. That was a very, very rocky road. While working with your parents can be a great thing, it's also a very difficult thing emotionally for a lot of people. And for a long time after being off probation and being turned scot-free and cut loose, I was doing prescription drugs and drinking, and that was how I was getting through. That's how I was coping. And I had kids, and I decided I have to get sober. This is reckless. This is it was funny too, because I always justified it, just like a lot of people. I justified the drinking, and I was abusing Adderall, and like bad. And I always justified it because I was using it to be more productive and to be better at my job, right? With obviously all the consequences that go along with that. And I had kids. I have a 7.5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and that woke me up and said, you need to actually make a change and grow up. Or I know a lot of, we're talking about growing up and the process of growing up. I know a lot of 50-year-olds that are fucking idiots and still act like they're 15. And I never wanted to be that guy. I always wanted to have that Kaizen, continual improvement. Everything I do, I have a lot of hobbies, a lot of things. I'm always trying to be better at what I do. And I think that is important. And football, coming out of that, and you have a lot of people. I mean, a lot of guys that come into jiu-jitsu that, they played sports in high school, right? And it's something that people don't really talk about. If you grow up playing sports, especially if you went and played in college, if you grow up and that is who you are and that's what you do, when you get rid of that, you're going to go through some things, because even if you hate it, it's part of what you do, and it's part of who you are. And when I found jiu-jitsu, I think it was so funny. I'd never really been manhandled my whole life. Like, even when I played football, I was being physical was never the problem. I was always a hard hitter, right? I might forget what fucking play it is because I was stoned, but I was going to knock you out. And so I'd never been manhandled my whole life. And I go into jiu-jitsu the first day, and there's a guy named Jerry Boroff at the first gym I used to train at. Jerry Boroff, he's been around forever. He put me, about 170 pounds soaking wet. He put me in an arm bar in about 10 seconds. And I went, oh, hell no, right? And I fell in love with jiu-jitsu. And like, there's the relationship you have with jiu-jitsu. It's such a good metaphor for life, because life is hard. You're going to hit obstacles. You're going to get frustrated. You're going to feel like, I don't even know what I'm doing, And I think the key is getting comfortable with that, getting to a point where you anticipate those ups and downs in life. And just like you anticipate, you're going to tap, you're going to have a bad day. You're going to get gassed out. You're going to do something wrong. You're going to miss an opportunity. You're going to miss a submission. Well, there's that. All those things happen in life too. I have, still have, and deal with it through exercise and through jiu-jitsu, horrible anxiety. And I've been able to channel it through exercise and through training. That, I think a lot of, especially men, it's very, and nothing will get me riled up faster than people discrediting, or not validating mental health. Because, a lot of people look at me and go, oh man, this is a big, tough, strong guy or whatever. And I'm telling you something, I've struggled hard. I've been in some horrible, dark places. And for people to discredit that and to say, oh, that's bullshit, it's just an attitude, whatever. No, it's a chemical imbalance that I deal with. And I've gotten it so much more under control. Actually, a little something I left out too. After I got arrested, I was back in Texas. I was back in my hometown. I got into strongman and powerlifting, and that that kind of gave me that old, oh yeah, this reminds me of football, kind of filled that hole a little bit, right? And I got injured. I tore my ACL and about 6 years ago. And, it was basically, all right, if you want to be top tier, world class level at this, you're going to have to run all the steroids in the world. Well, I'm not going to do that. I have kids, I'm going to die at 40. I'm not going to do that. And so I gave up on that. Or I can give up. It's funny that my training methods now I'm so glad I had that experience in strongman, because that has led to the type of strength that I have that translates to jiu-jitsu. And that was a powerlifting and strongman, and just being a gym rat was a big part of my life. And that's how I filled that void. I've only been training jiu-jitsu for 2 years, and I took to it well. And like I said, that first day you get armbarred by someone a third your size and you go, oh, hell no. Right. And that's what got me fired up about it. And it's you want to talk about humbling, talk to any jiu-jitsu person. If you're not comfortable with being humble, then you're probably not going to last very long in jiu-jitsu. Right. I mean, you have to meet that adversity and meet those bad days with the mindset of, okay, I'm not going to let that happen again. Just like if you get arrested for selling weed in college, you better not let that happen again. You better learn something from it. You better take something from it, or the world will eat you alive, or your opponent will eat you alive. It's all the same. As I was talking about like other sports, my dad's a real good golfer, and real good. And my whole life, he's always made these comparisons to golf, right? And like metaphors for like, well, it's just like in the golf game, and he almost jokes about it now. And now I do the same thing with jiu-jitsu. It's like I use these metaphors, even the way that I have gone about approaching my business relationships and the way I handle certain situations in home building. There's some sticky situations where there's a lot of money changing hands, and it's there's people that do you wrong, and there's ways you have to handle things. And there is a right and a wrong way to do that. And I'm from a relatively small. If you do it wrong, you're gonna hear about it, right? And so it's like slowing down. My college coach always said, "You are a Clydesdale without a bridle," right? Because I would approach everything like, "Fuck you! I'm going 1,000 miles an hour. I don't care what the rules are, I don't care what the play is. 1,000 miles an hour." And jiu-jitsu, it's so ironic because now I honestly, I can get up and scrap, and I love to scrap and all that stuff, but I play a pretty chill game for the most part, which is ironic. But I don't know. It's crazy. It's been jiu-jitsu itself, I think, has, of all the sports, all the weightlifting, all the hobbies. I mean, I'm telling you, I do it all, man. I fly fish and cook and play guitar and drums, all that stuff. All the things I do in my life, jiu-jitsu has the largest capacity within itself as a hobby or sport or whatever, however you want to put it, to really benefit people, because it teaches you those lessons in a really hard way.
Yeah. It tempers you. It sounds like it basically is that thing that fills that hole inside of you that these other things were providing, like high level football and whatnot. And I feel like people like us, man, we're just like genetic animals. We have some sort of a DNA inside of us that is inherited from our ancestors that tells us like we need to always be on the hunt, or we need to always be like doing something. And I think that a lot of men ignore that, and that's what leads to a lot of issues. And it's like these things need an outlet. It's like we have this savage warrior inside of us that feels out of place in the modern world. Like there's no place to be a samurai in modern day technology or modern day society other than on the football field or really on the jiu-jitsu mats. Like that's the best spot to experience that, because you kind of get that taste of what life and death feels like. And man, I wanted to ask you about this. Speaking of life and death, I've seen a lot of photos of you training with Gordon Ryan and training with the guys at New Wave. Can you talk about that experience and like what have you taken away from that? Not just from a jiu-jitsu perspective, but just how has that impacted your look on life and athleticism and everything?
It's funny. How I got hooked up with those guys is a funny story in itself. Dan Montessori, he is my good buddy now, but our relationship started by me reaching out to him on Instagram and going, hey, how big are you? Because I genuinely have a hard time finding training partners that are my size. And he's like, oh, I'm 6'7". At the time, I think he was like 280 or something like that. So, oh, cool. I'm a big guy too. If you ever need a training partner, let me know. And then he was like, well, come down tomorrow. And so that's how I started training with them. And it's very much so a closed practice, very, invite only kind of thing. So it was a big honor. And I recognize that immediately of like, okay, don't fuck this up, right? Don't go in there and try to be a meathead and don't go there and try to win, go there and be a good training partner. And I don't know, it's surreal every time I train. I try to go there 1 to 2 times a week, and sometimes I have weeks where I go 3 times, and sometimes I have weeks where I don't get to go because I got kids and a job and family and stuff like that. But there's this, like, the jiu-jitsu aspect of it is exactly what you think it is, as far as the level of instruction that John gives is just his verbiage and his metaphors. It's like you're getting to do one of his instructionals, but in person. And it's insane how smart these guys are with jiu-jitsu. And I'll be the first to admit, I'm more technical than you would think for a big guy, but I don't have anywhere inkling close. I have physicality, but I don't have their kind of jiu-jitsu, right? And when you train with, I'm not taking anything away from my training partners in where I train at Select. We got some great talent there. But when you go into that room, and even the people that are half your size are going to give you a fucking fit, and you give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. It's really crazy. There's these kind of tiers and levels of like the different opponents that I've faced in there. And the guys that you see on some of the big name tournaments, like Dan and like Gordon and Nicholas and some of these other guys, it's Luke. It is ineffable. It's hard to describe how their talent is so good. Their jiu-jitsu is so good, along with their physical attributes, that there's not really a chance for someone like me to get to use jiu-jitsu. Does that make sense? I'm always on the defensive. There's never a moment where I go, maybe I could tee off and do an armbar. Oh, maybe I could wrestle up here. No, there is. I am always flat on my back. I am always getting my ass kicked. And I mean, I might have a guy that comes that's visiting, that's training, and I get to tee off on him. That's fun. Makes you feel like, okay, maybe I'm not the bottom dog today, But most days I go in there, as far as the heavyweights are concerned, I am the low end on the totem pole. And that's great for me, because my skill level, because of getting to experience the highest threshold, the highest level of jiu-jitsu, it has gone up insanely, immensely in a very short period of time. Because, okay, you ever play basketball against a kid, right? Or roll against a kid or whatever like that? You're not going to get as good at basketball doing that versus going and playing. You're going to be forced, trial by fire, to be performing at a high level when you compete with the highest tier. And so, just by osmosis, being in the same room and getting to roll around with those guys, I've gotten a lot better. And it's, but golly, it is beyond humbling, and that's good, because especially for big guys, man. You big guys. I've always. I do like to dispel the, what do you call it, illusion or the perception of big guys that we're all just big and lazy and going to lay on you and all that kind of stuff, because that's not true. A lot, there's a lot of big guys that can move, and I go from doing real well in my home gym and kind of getting to try out my techniques and that kind of stuff, to like, you better buckle your seatbelt, boy, because these guys they're gonna smother tap you like that. It's crazy. My strength doesn't matter in there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. Does it help me? Does it help me maybe get out of a few submissions every once in a while? Sure. But it's just a means to an end for them. They go, oh, you got out of that? Here's this. And in the leg locking game, holy shit. It is that's still like way over my head as far as the technicality behind that. And the level that they have that down, and kind of the almost savant level of understanding that everyone there has of jiu-jitsu is crazy. It's just crazy.
Man, that's the room that's going to get you even better, though. Like, if you're the best person in the room, it's time to find a different room. That's one of the sayings I've tried to live by in jiu-jitsu training, and it's always served me really well. Like, there's always the best room that all the local savages are training in, and that's the room to be in because it attracts a certain talent.
I'm lucky because where I train in at Select Jiu-Jitsu, I was at a gym prior to that, and I was not getting any better. There wasn't anybody that could give me a fit. And then I moved, even just going to like you said, kind of find the room where the pit bulls are at, and you're going to get better. Moving across town and going to another gym, that alone just made a huge difference, you know. And but then there's that, like I said, kind of the levels and tiers. Then you go into Roca, New Wave, and like, you know, you're the bottom guy on the totem pole, you know. But it's fun.
It's powerful. There's always a bigger fish, isn't there? I think that's one of the great lessons. It's something I was talking about with my friend Jake. He did a private earlier, and we were talking afterwards about this and how, like, jiu-jitsu gives you a accurate level of confidence. Like, it gives you more confidence because you learn how to defend yourself and all that good stuff. But then it also humbles you, you know, just as it's creating more confidence. And it's really kind of interesting how those two things work together. Like, it ends up putting you like kind of smack dab in the middle where you should be.
Yep. Yeah, and we should all walk around and know that you can be as big and as bad as you want. You can be as good at jiu-jitsu or striking, whatever the hell you're doing. And there's always somebody that can whoop your ass. And that's it kind of, I don't know, it's good because, like you said, if you're just complacent being at your gym and you're running through people, you're not getting any better, you know. And it's a good thing for everyone to get. You ever see a guy that's like an asshole to people and treats people badly, and you're like, man, that guy needs his ass kicked. Like, wouldn't it be great if those guys could just go to one jiu-jitsu class, just go to the trial class, you know, and like, no, actually this 150-pound kid can flip you over and have his way with you.
Yeah, exactly. Or a woman, or a woman who's been training for 6 months.
Yeah. Just that little bit of knowledge. No, but you know, another thing I loved about jiu-jitsu too is that in general, most of the people I meet that train consistently are good people, because I think that to stick with it and to be serious about it, all the things we're just talking about, you have to adhere to those. And so I don't ever see anybody treating anybody badly, you know. I don't, not where my gym is. I don't ever see people. I mean, golly, you walk into Roca and be with the New Wave guys. You've never, all the shit that you see online with about B team versus Roca. Let me tell you something. Roca, that's the nicest people I've ever met in my life. I'm treated with more respect and kindness there than you could ever imagine. And it's I don't know. It's funny. It's such a good group of guys up there. And no matter what image someone paints of something, you're always going to know there's more to it. There's more to it than that. And I don't know. It's just,
Yeah. Who knows how much of that is, who knows how much of it is just to create more hype versus reality versus playing things up versus, like, at the end of the day, you don't know what's going on. You don't know what conversations are happening behind closed doors. You know what I mean? Like, and at the end of the day, it's none of our business. It doesn't really affect you or me or any of us. And at day's end, really, I'm just a big fan of jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't really enjoy I don't really enjoy like the trash talk and all that. I'm just a fan of someone's jiu-jitsu. Like, I don't care if you got something on someone in some verbal argument or whatever. Like, I don't even pay attention to that stuff. It doesn't interest me. But I love watching someone's jiu-jitsu, and I feel like it says a lot about them. And you can tell how disciplined someone is by how good their jiu-jitsu is, because the two are correlated. And you can just tell a lot by someone just by how skilled they are. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful way to assess someone. And you're right. Like, there aren't a whole lot of assholes at the top end jiu-jitsu, and they usually get weeded out if there are any.
Yep. I don't know. And especially like the friends that I've gained and just the people at, at my home gym here in Select. I mean, first of all, the level of instruction I'm getting there is also second to none, and a very experienced professor, Lance Yeager, and he is like, the way that he breaks everything down into another thing relating back to mental health too. I don't learn moves. If you could show me some elaborate submission, and guess what? It's going to go, woo, whatever. I like broad underlying concepts that help me physiologically or psychologically understand what I'm trying to accomplish. And if that makes sense, like, control their shoulders. Okay, I can do that, right? And I love the way he teaches, and I love being around like-minded people. It's kind of like a joke, like when you go to a party when there's not another jiu-jitsu person, like, I don't know what to do with my hands anymore, It's like, oh shit. And I have a lot of friends that don't train, it's hard to explain it to them. But.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Hey, I wanted to do one last question if you got time, but could we just do a quick comparison on what was your experience like training jiu-jitsu versus your experience training football? Because you've done both at a pretty high level. And let's just talk a little bit about that. Like, where are those two disciplines similar, and where are they like completely different?
The fundamental difference between football and jiu-jitsu is, regardless of what gym you're from, regardless of who you train with or whatever, jiu-jitsu is an individualistic sport. It's you play it by yourself. It's 1 versus 1. While it would be cool if it had 5 versus 5, that'd be pretty cool. No, it's 1v1. Football's a team sport, right? So there is an element. I was an offensive lineman, so from my perspective, I didn't get any of the glory, there wasn't anything like that. I didn't get to score the touchdown. So it's even more of a unit thing. We don't do well unless all of us are doing well. And so football was interesting because you yourself could be doing poorly at your sport, but your team could win, right? And the mentality that you have to it's not so different as far as a psychological game plan or mindset that you have to have. It's not so different. You let's say you're a defensive lineman and you're going to fire off the ball and try to get a tackle. You still have a responsibility to control your gap. You still have a responsibility to know how the rest of the defense is going to shift, just like in jiu-jitsu of, maybe you could blow by the guard right then, but wait, make sure he doesn't have a Kimura locked up or he's going to rip your damn arm off. And so there's a lot of things you have to keep in the back of your mind. In both sports, there is a game plan with both, where you have to know your opponent. You have to know what they're capable of, so that you can approach or address things accordingly, if that makes sense. I mean, the main difference with the two, I would say, really goes back to fundamentally being one is an individual sport and one is a team sport. And because of that, I think that the losses are harder in jiu-jitsu, harder to cope with than, while it sucks and it's emotional when you lose in football. I hate to say it, and I this is funny when I tell people this, I never really liked the game of football that much. I liked hitting people and I liked moving them and putting them on their ass. That's what was fun for me. I liked lifting weights, and I liked sprints, and I liked to do the conditioning, and I liked physical contact. If I'm being honest, I told my teammates this back then too, we could lose a game, and as long as I did good, I was like, it's all right, whatever. And I'm not selfish, but I feel like that's what's cool about grappling, fighting, jiu-jitsu, whatever. It's one-on-one. If you lose, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt emotionally. It's going to hurt your ego. But when you win, oh man, right? There's nothing better than that. And the same could be true. Your team could win, but you played a shitty game, right? And are you happy with yourself then? It shouldn't be, even if you won. I don't know. You should be glad your team won, but it's not so different. I now in football in particular, since it's broken up by plays, that I think you could compare jiu-jitsu more to basketball than you could the football, because it's this flow. It's this, you're kind of addressing things as they come from a micro and a macro perspective. You shift and you change your defense, you change your spread based upon what your opponent is giving you, and it's kind of a continual back and forth of football. Like, I don't know, it from a the biggest thing that I had to learn. I remember my first day. I keep going back to that. I got armbarred, and then I went against and that was like a 4-stripe black belt, and okay, I can stomach that, right? But then I'm rolling against some other big white belt, good friend Cody. I just got done training with him again, and he's big and strong and did strongman with me and an athlete, and so we just went at it, dude. And he had been doing it about 6 more months than I have, and we just were going at it. I threw up in the parking lot. I mean, because I was gassed. And from a conditioning standpoint, if you don't have control of your mental game, if you don't have control over what's going on in your mind, your inner dialogue, that's going to lead to getting gassed out, making the wrong decision. In football, you kind of have a chance to literally catch your breath between plays and go, okay, that play's over, on to the next one. That's not how it works in grappling. That's not how it works. It's one mistake can lead to some dire consequences, as opposed to, shit, I gave up a sack. Well, let's get back in the huddle. We're doing a left trips 26. Okay, whatever. And then it's a new play every time. You don't get that chance. And I guess if you recover guard or get to wrestle up or get to something, you get a chance to take a breath. But I don't know, that's where it's probably the most different. You have to live with your consequences a little bit more, but
Yeah, it makes sense. It's almost like it teaches you this lesson of individuality in jiu-jitsu, and then the team sports, obviously you're getting more of the team element. You know what I mean? And it sounds kind of obvious when you think about it, but really, I mean, both of us are kind of a little biased here, I'd say, because I think we both are maybe gravitating towards jiu-jitsu these days. But I feel like the jiu-jitsu, it kind of prepares you better for taking on life, because a lot of times in life, you don't necessarily have a team. I mean, you might. I mean, if you're lucky and you have a good support system, or if you spent time really building that, then you do. But average Joe usually is kind of on his own, if you think about it. So I feel like jiu-jitsu, it prepares you for that, but it also does it with a squad, because you have the people that you're training with and you have that community that develops. But the community prepares you to actually go and deal with it yourself, if that makes sense. And I feel like that's a powerful, powerful lesson,
Very much so. It'd be the same as your quote unquote teammates, the guys in your gym. Those are kind of the same relationship that you'd have with your peers, except, I don't know, you grow together and you hope you grow together, and some people quit, right? And some of your peers might metaphorically quit and give up or whatever. But the ones that stick it out, those are the ones that succeed ultimately. And so it's, I obviously am biased towards jiu-jitsu. If I could go back and wish one thing, it would be that, first of all, we had a wrestling program. I wish we had a wrestling program. It's not very common in Texas. There are schools that have them. They're mostly private schools, or they're mostly big 6A schools. And I wish I had aspirations. I did a lot of striking growing up and stuff like that, and used to spar with people and loved it. I wish I would have taken all that more seriously and seen how much more I liked it. And I knew I liked it more back then, but it wasn't. When you're in Texas and you're a big old boy, you're playing football. You don't have a choice. That's they're going to throw you in there. Oh, you're an O lineman. Okay. Whatever. So, there is no conversation. Oh, you're playing football. Okay. Like, I guess I am, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of like that here in Missouri too. But hey, man, this has been a great chat. I've had a really good time hearing your story and getting to share this information. Could you share with us, like, if someone wants to work with you or wants to talk with you, where can they hit you up?
Man, honestly, at this point, just on Instagram, I'm pretty neurotic about responding to my messages and stuff like that. I'm working on getting a domain and a website and kind of getting that figured out, but at this point, I'm pretty accessible on Instagram. I check all my requests and stuff like that. And if anyone ever wants any information on training, mobility training, strength training, conditioning, anything, just holler at me.
Can you tell us just a little more about that? Because I've been watching your videos on Instagram like crazy. Can you just tell us a little bit more about what you do to help people with their mobility?
Yeah. I remember I was saying I grew up with the martial arts in the back of my mind, doing my dad teaching me kicks and I've always worked towards doing the splits as a kid, and I could do the splits from about age 7 to 8 on up, and I've still been able to do it. I think that issues with mobility sometimes are based with your physiology and based upon your anatomy and just literal limitations. But I think people get hung up on that and they go, oh man, I'm just not flexible. It's like, no, you just, because of your physical makeup, you might need to work a little bit harder at that particular range of motion, and you can always build it. I'm big on dynamic stretching and dynamic movements, as far as like, I always feel that as opposed to a static stretch, that, movements and things that kind of sometimes have their origin in I don't know, in Pilates and yoga and floor exercises and things like that, are always going to be superior to just a regular static stretch. It's having that blood flow in the muscle group and being able to do it when it matters and do it when you're moving is very important. I've had a lot of, believe it or not, and this is what I think, if I had a mission statement and a goal behind my Instagram stuff that I post with my training, it's to get people to understand that lifting weights does not make you immobile. If anything, lifting weights properly will improve your mobility drastically. And, oh, your hips are tight? Learn how to squat ass to grass and they won't be tight, and if that's hard to do, work towards it. It's like anything else. People get frustrated when they're not good at something, right? And so they give up on it. They go, oh, I'm just not good at it. Well, it just takes work. And I have, when people get programs from me, part of the deal is I send them some YouTube instructionals that they're just me leading you through a mobility routine that I do post lift every day. And I've done that same routine or variations of that routine since I left college. And it was something that we did a lot at TCU. We had an extremely high level, very highly accredited strength and conditioning coach named Don Summer, who was our strength coach. And he's my favorite person there. He was like a cartoon character. And I mean, like, just the biggest, toughest motherfucker you ever met in your life. He was huge. Played in the NFL. He's like, I don't know, like 6'6", like 350 pounds. And he had this mobility routine that we basically did post lift and pre football practice all the time. And there were variations of it that we did, different versions, but that we did not have that many injuries at TCU. There wasn't these big catastrophic injuries because our strength and conditioning program there was, in my mind and a lot of people's minds, one of the main reasons we had as much success as we did. This just second to none as far as our strength coach. And Matt Parker was another one too. Matt Parker, he I believe he works at a high school now, and both of his daughters are state champion wrestlers, and one of them I think still wrestles in college. But so he actually he wanted this. I gotta add this. This is funny. When I was at TCU, we had this one intern that was a GA, and none of us knew what jiu-jitsu was at all. And he was like pretty small. And I remember one day his name is Steve Gebhardt. And Steve, you know, he's got the ears, you know, it's like, this guy looks tough. I don't know. This motherfucker wadded every lineman up into a pretzel and, you know, just fucked them up in the locker room. And that actually might have been the moment that I go, oh man, jiu-jitsu is pretty cool. I'm going to check this out. But it was cool. But
dude, that's awesome. Bro, I'm really glad that you're doing that. That's awesome. And hey, if you're listening to this and you want to work on your mobility, go follow Ty's Instagram page and hit him up if you want some help. I'm going to put the link down below and click that link and then click that button after that says follow on Instagram. But Ty, this has been amazing. Thanks so much for sharing your story, brother. I appreciate it.